Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to a wild and crazy, fast-moving primetime sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and this show tonight is going to rock. I'm telling you, it's going to get crazy because if there was ever an event that lives up to its name, well, it's March Madness. And I got to tell you, it doesn't get any crazier this year than in the South bracket. If you're looking at the brackets up in your upper right, left, and by the way, all four seeds couldn't even make it out of the first weekend. On Thursday, it all started when four-seeded Arizona, who many thought should have been a second or third seed, they were stunned by 13-seeded Buffalo. And then the next day, on Friday, it was the upset we've all been waiting for when the first time in NCAA tournament history, a 16-seed finally knocked out a 1-seed. That's right, UMBC, which at first I thought was either a Baptist church or a bank. Well, they did the unthinkable, beating unthinkable. They beat Virginia, who had only 2 losses all year long. And they only gave up 53 points a game, but against the University of Maryland, Baltimore County Retrievers, well, they gave up 53 points in the second half alone. But then on Saturday, it didn't stop there. In the round of 32 in that South bracket, Loyola Chicago, the Ramblers, they knocked out third-seed Tennessee on a game-winning buzzer beater. It was an incredible game, but they did the same thing 2 nights earlier to Miami. Well, they knocked them out on a three-pointer at the buzzer. Hey, and on Sunday in the South, it was second-seeded Cincinnati's turn to go down. This time it was to Nevada, who for the second straight game, they came back from a huge deficit to knock out the Bearcats in that game. Hey, by the way, today we have Nevada head coach Eric Musselman. He's on to talk about those 2 incredible wins. They are on to the Sweet 16. And by the way, Musselman, he was Johnny Jones' assistant coach back when Jones was at LSU, obviously, as the head coach. Well, now Johnny Jones, who was the head coach of LSU, is Eric Musselman's assistant over there in Nevada. So that's a nice little story. We'll talk to him about that. Hey, and Tim Brando from Fox Sports will also join us today to talk about March Madness, how crazy it's been, including those other upsets this weekend. Just on Sunday, first-seeded Xavier also fell, second-seeded UNC, third-seeded Michigan State, who many had winning it. They all lost on Sunday in the round of 32. And by the way, also NIT action last week, it was crazy. I went to the LSU-UL Lafayette game, and that turned out to be a nuts game. LSU ended up taking the end, but not before head coach Will Wade and Bob Marlin, who you see right there, both got into it. They had to be restrained from each other. LSU ended up victorious. I don't think they're going to be on each other's Christmas card list. But by the way, LSU plays tonight against Utah on the road. That's a big game. Hopefully they can get that done. Hey, my other guests today include longtime Major League umpire Hunter Wendelstedt, who along with his father Harry, they've been in the umpiring business for over 50 years consecutively. How crazy is that? That's going to be a great story with Major League Baseball starting up just around the corner. Hey, by the way, the Pelicans, they beat the Celtics last night in a much-needed win, I guess, on Sunday night. And we have Daniel Sallerson, the Pels post-game host, to tell you all about their huge week. They've got back-to-back-to-back because of the rain out in Indiana. They're having to make that game up, and I can't wait to talk to Daniel. And in other news for the Saints, and Dominic Sue just visited down here in New Orleans, the great, obviously, defensive tackle who played with the Lions and then most recently with the Dolphins. He had dinner at Emerald's with general manager Mickey Loomis. And by the way, the Saints could really use that bulk inside to help out Cam Jordan and Sheldon Rankins. That would be huge. And on a sad note, as you all know, Saints and Pelicans owner Tom Benson passed away last week at the age of 90. The man who bought the Saints in 1985 and turned them into winners for the first time will certainly be missed by everyone in the Crescent City. Tim Brando, who was the Saints preseason play-by-play guy for 11 years, is going to talk about Tom Benson and give a little tribute to there. But we have a great show. I told you all that's going to happen in the next hour right here on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
My baby love me just like a watching chain. She wind me up and she run me down again. My baby love me, child, she love me. She love me like a watching chain, watching chain.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports. I told you Major League Baseball is right around the corner. I'm going to have umpire Hunter Wendelstedt. He's going to be joining us, as well as Pelicans post-game reporter Daniel Sallerson. And Tim Brando is going to tell you all about March Madness and give you a tribute to passed-away owner Tom Benson of the Pelicans and, of course, the Saints. But right now, one of the great stories in college basketball are the Nevada Wolfpack. And I got to tell you, the head coach, Eric Musselman, if you listen to sports radio, you probably heard him for years on Jim Rome's show. I knew him back when he was an assistant coach with the Atlanta Hawks. And he also was a head coach with the Golden State Warriors, the Sacramento Kings. His dad was a great head coach, Bill Musselman is his name, and he is a basketball lifer, and he still looks like he's 22 years old. His name's Eric Musselman, and his assistant coach happens to be Johnny Jones, where they both at LSU together as well. But Eric, welcome to the show, and congratulations, my man.
No, thanks so much for having me on, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Hey, by the way, your run has been nothing short of miraculous. Obviously, because of the way you won the games, you were down to Texas by double digits. I think it might have been 14. And then yesterday you had the big deficit, and you still came back and won that. Take us through these last two games and how you came back from huge, being down from so many points.
Well, I mean, we were, excited to be in the tournament. And I think both first halves we came out a little bit timid, and then once we gathered ourselves and regrouped and were able to make some halftime adjustments, I think, our guys have really not quit when things looked bleak. We've done a really good job of mixing some things up defensively. Last year we went to some trapping defense that we didn't play at all against Cincinnati in the first half, and that kind of took them out of rhythm. And against Texas Tech, we were able to speed up the tempo of the game. We like to play fast and shoot a lot of threes. So I just think it's kind of been a testament to, who's going to win the battle of styles. And Texas and Cincinnati definitely owned us in the first half of games. And then as the games wore on, we were able to create our own identity and style and the theme that we wanted to play with.
Well, two of my Final Four are already out, but I can take pride in one thing. Your bracket, I have Loyola and Nevada going in the Sweet 16. I'm not going to tell you who I have winning that game, but this is a big matchup. Loyola has had two buzzer beaters. They're a great story. Everybody knows about the sister, the nun that's been at Loyola for a long time. They're one of these teams that everybody's rooting for as well, like yourself. Talk about this matchup coming up this week, because this Sweet 16 will be pretty much like we haven't seen in a while. Two great teams that people didn't know about, but they're playing great basketball.
Yeah, I don't know much about Loyola other than they've done a great job. Their coaching staff has. They've had an unbelievable record to win the amount of games that they have. I do know they pass the ball extremely well. They have great ball movement, great spacing. And so we're going to have to try to defend for a full shot clock. They'll also play fast, so it should be a high-scoring game. But we'll dive into the film today once we catch our breath and start doing our game preps, Monday night, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then get ready to play the game on Thursday.
Hey, talk about your relationship with Johnny Jones, because you were kind of at a pivotal point in your career. People might have forgotten. You came down to Baton Rouge for, I know, at least a year, maybe two, and you were Johnny Jones' assistant coach here, and now he's your assistant coach. Talk about that whole run there and how that came about.
Yeah, Coach Jones and I didn't know each other when I went to LSU, but David Patrick was a really good friend of mine, and obviously DP was on Coach Jones' staff, and so we kind of made a leap of faith, and Coach Jones and his wife and his son and daughter, they're a big part of this basketball family that we have at Nevada, and we developed a great relationship as friends, maybe more importantly than even coaching colleagues, and When he was out of a job, I offered him to come join us. He accepted, and he's done a great job for us in all aspects of our program. And we feel lucky and fortunate to have somebody with his experience as an assistant coach.
Coach, I mean, for a guy that looks so young, you have a ton of experience. What makes this place you're at right now? And we're showing a picture of you celebrating right now with your hands up. Your shirt is kind of pulled up. You're showing the torso, still in shape, Coach. But what makes this spot at Nevada and this team so special? Because they certainly seem to be one of these teams of destiny.
Well, I mean, we have a great group of kids, but for me it's great because, I have a son that's 3 hours away playing high school basketball in the Bay Area, and obviously having coached the Kings, which is 2 hours away from Sacramento, Reno is, and then the fact that the Bay Area is 3 hours away from a logistics standpoint, it made a ton of sense for me from recruiting and everything else. And we've spent, 3 years, even this year. This is our third year at Nevada, and we've had 4 sit-out guys each of the 3 years. So we've been playing with a depleted roster. Don't have much depth, but our guys have done a great job of getting in supreme condition. And even last night, we played Cincinnati, a great defensive team, and we only had 2 turnovers over the course of a hard-fought 40-minute game, which is remarkable. And we only play 6 guys. So depth is always an issue with us, and we've always found a way to kind of survive. And even when guys were in foul trouble, we've done a good job of kind of managing minutes and getting us through games.
Coach, I told you I'd keep it short. I'm going to do that. I know you're trying to catch that team bus. You're going on to the regional along with Loyola, Chicago, Kentucky, and Kansas State. It should be fun to watch. And we down here in the Bayou wish you the best of luck, Coach. We can't wait to watch it.
Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. That is Eric Musselman, and I appreciate him taking the time. His bus literally is leaving right now, so we want to thank him, and this is going to be a great show. I'm going to have Tim Brando talk all about March Madness, the upsets and teams that he thinks are going to go in advance. Obviously, you have a great matchup with Coach K and Jim Boeheim, the 2 all-time winningest coaches in college basketball history. I don't think the NCAA tournament committee knew what they were getting into because, by the way, Boeheim was an 11th seed. He had to play a first 4 games, so he's already won 3 games. That's going to be great. We're going to talk about all that and more. The Villanovas, the upsets with North Carolina and Xavier falling and all those other upsets. It's going to be great. But I also have Hunter Wendelstedt. He's coming up next right here. He is a longtime Major League umpire. His father, Harry, was a longtime umpire as well. It's been in the family for over a half a century, and I can't wait to talk to him. That's going to be special. Coming up right here on Primetime Sports.
The love of my life is a shady lady. Turned me up just to bring me down. Used to be calm, but now she's crazy. I don't mind. She's not the love of my life anymore. Yup. Ha ha. I like this guitar.
All right. With all due respect to my favorite sport, basketball, and Eric Musselman and Tim Brando and Daniel Sallerson coming later, the guest that I've been looking forward to the most and probably for a full year is my next guest right here, Hunter Wendelstedt. If you know baseball, the Wendelstedt name should be familiar to you because they've been umpiring for 54 years. Well, not this man. He's not even 50 years old yet. But his father, Harry Wendelstedt, was a legend in this business. He just passed away 6 years ago. That's Harry on the left and Hunter on the right. Hunter Wendelstedt lives right here in Louisiana, across the lake in Mandeville. Can't give you an address. You don't want any stalkers. But he's right here joining us, and I couldn't be more thrilled because I used to be a part of the Braves broadcast team behind the scenes, no on-air stuff, and I've been around baseball for a long time. It was my favorite sport for a long time, and here he is. Hunter Wendelstedt, welcome to the show.
Scott, it's a pleasure. I figure you must not have been able to get any better guests. If you have to have me here, you must be filling time.
Small connections. First of all, Vince Lombardo, I've got to give him a shout out.
I love him.
He's the first one that said you were across the lake, and then I run into you over at Fulton Alley of all places, which I've only been to once in my life, and that was that night. And we run into you, and not because of you, I see your wife, who I used to know in college. So these small worlds are getting smaller.
And then to find out about your time in Atlanta and TBS and all that, it really has gotten a lot smaller.
I mean, how crazy. Speaking of all that, you kind of got started as an umpire back during that time I was in Atlanta, 1997. Then you did some spring training. Then you got to the big leagues. Talk about how you got in, because I know this is a family affair. But umpires are an interesting breed because they're not always the most beloved characters because you only see them a lot of times when they're getting yelled at.
Well, I thought I was going to be a big league ball player.
Right.
There was one problem: I couldn't hit the curveball.
And
that's something you need to do if you're going to be. If you're
a lot
gonna
of us
be in
have
the
that
big
problem, by the way.
league. Yeah. And then I got to Loyola, and I decided to come here, and I fell in love with the city of New Orleans, and all my fraternity brothers were pre-med or pre-law, and I was a history major. And God bless them, I love history, but what are you going to be? You're going to be a school teacher, and they're grossly underpaid, and that was just a lifestyle I didn't want to do. So I went to umpire school and finished at the top of the class and worked my way through the minor leagues, and it all happened to work out.
Well, you mentioned something because I don't know exactly where you're from. Where are you from, and how did you end up at Loyola? That's an interesting story to me because I was kind of curious when I heard you were living here.
Well, you brought up my wife that you've known for a long time, Catherine, and I was going to be a Florida Gator my whole life. I still take grief on the North Shore. I'm the one that flies the Gator flag when they play LSU.
Do it, huh?
Oh, that's me.
My goodness.
I'm out of Florida, but
I get it. I understand.
Get all the grief. But then the guidance counselor said, well, you can't be focused on just going to University of Florida. And this gentleman comes to Father Lopez High School, and it's Brian Berrigan, who knows Vincent very well. And Brian was the admissions director at Loyola. Told me to come look at it. The minute I landed in the city of New Orleans, I knew I would never leave.
You loved it that much?
Loved it. And I looked at it. I said, I can drive home from Loyola, go to the swamp and watch Gator games on Saturday and get back Sunday. So
I was gone for 25 years, and the minute I left, I was plotting my way back. Maybe not the minute, but it's something that gets into your blood if you're from here or if you come to visit and then you want to stay like yourself. But, hey, your father is, when I hear Wendelstedt, you think of umpiring. I mean, he's a legend, and he's one of the few that is beloved by everybody. Because not all umpires are loved, and there's one from that we'll talk about later that I'm still not fond of because he screwed my team out of another World Series chance. But your dad is a legend in this business. He obviously passed away 6 years ago, but talk about what that meant to you, and then both of you umpiring in the major leagues at the same time. That's kind of unusual.
I think the crazy thing now is it's popular in society to make up an excuse or complain about your family or do something like that. But Dad was a Marine, and I think that instilled a lot of the values that he tried to pass on to me. And one of the things was you have to be honest with yourself, in umpiring especially, but in life. You have to look yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself. Those are great shots.
Tommy Lasorda. Does it get any better than tossing Tommy?
Tommy's one of a kind. He is one of the best ambassadors of baseball.
Oh, I love him. I love him.
And looking at these old pictures, except that first one of me and I can't believe Dad dressed me up as a little sailor Navy guy.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, that's one of the best family pictures I've ever seen with you and your beautiful mother and obviously little sailor boy. But moving forward, first of all, this is what everybody, when you talk to an umpire, you have to ask them, what's your favorite moment of being in the major leagues? I mean, this is the big leagues. These are the greatest baseball players of all time, and you're like 2 feet away from them, and they're making their swings.
Well, I started my first game in the major leagues was at Coors Field. I went from Oklahoma City that had about 1,500 fans, got the phone call, had to work a split doubleheader. I was the happiest kid in the world.
And they were relatively new at the time.
They were new. It was crazy. There were 50,000.
Yeah.
I had been doing it for years, but the first call that I actually had was a foul ball that today I wouldn't even motion. I wouldn't make any type of thing. And the ball went about 4 feet to me. I was working third. I went, foul! And Vinny Castilla, who was at third base, goes, hey, are you new? I went, first day.
First day.
Because you didn't do that.
Right.
That's not how someone with any seniority acts. That's what you learn.
He goes, you knew or something?
Yeah.
That team, they could all hit the ball. Galarraga, Bichette. I mean, they were the Bombers, right?
They were
the
good.
Colorado Rockies. Hey,
good.
by the way, as an umpire, you have to eject certain people, and I know you're one of the nicer ones out there, but your very first ejection happened in Cincinnati against my beloved Braves. You're not the first to eject Bobby Cox, and certainly not the last. But John Smoltz, you got them both.
Look at that.
Those guys didn't get ejected very much. Talk about that one.
Wow, look at that. That was, I didn't have gray hair back then, and it's about 50 pounds lighter.
Yeah, hey, join the club.
I'll never forget the play. It was a fly ball. It was my last game, supposedly, of the year that I was going to be in the big leagues. I had made it through right there. John Smoltz is pointing. Play to left field. And there's a bang-bang play with Boone, at the bag, and I called him safe, and I pointed to show where he had touched. And right there, I step on John
Chipper
Schmaltz.
Jones right there,
Chipper
too.
Jones was there.
Yeah.
Everyone's pointing. But this is a rookie mistake. When I went to point, which you shouldn't do, I stepped on Schmaltz's foot. Schmaltz crashes into me. Okay? This is right after the Alomar spitting on John Hirschbeck.
Yeah, right,
where I don't even have a contract, but the unit attorney said, you have to have this bubble. No one enters the bubble. There's zero contact. Well, you have to be honest with yourself, which I didn't know.
Bubble, right?
I stepped on his foot. Now, he bumped into me, so I throw him out, which then almost immediately, like a time warp, Bobby Cox is in my face.
Oh, God.
And what a strong man he is. He pushed me out of the way.
Yeah, look at Bobby.
Yeah, that resulted in his ejection, too.
So you got them both. Man, you got a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame pitcher in one. And by the way, John Schmaltz, his year off, I got to work in the booth with him, and he's one of the nicest, most knowledgeable guys. And now he's doing World Series games, and he's great.
I sat with him on the plane. It's funny, during Bobby Cox's Hall of Fame, Schmaltz introduced him and talked about him and brought me up, and the same thing happened when Schmaltz got inducted.
That's really a great story, especially because you're being honest about it. You stepped on his foot,
Stepped right on his foot.
into you, and he's ejected.
Yeah, the director of umpiring, Paul Runge, called up. He goes, "You have only one thing going for you right now." And
Your dad.
No, he said, "You got the call right."
You got the call right.
He goes, "Everything after getting the call was terrible."
Right. Paul Runge, I hadn't heard that name in a while. Hey, what about this? What about instant replay? Because that has changed the game a little bit. And I know umps at first were like, hey, it's our call, but how has this changed the game for you?
I think for me particularly, I used to make an analogy because people have been talking about this forever.
Many years.
And my biggest fear was to get a World Series, in my first World Series, and have it be like Chicago and Cleveland, the two longest that had never been there, and screw something up. And sure enough, there it was. See, I worked my first World Series was San Francisco and Kansas City.
Nice.
And that was the first year they had replay.
That was a fun one.
And it went 7 games, which, anyone that says they want to go 7 games is lying.
Well, fans,
fans want it. Umpires, they don't pay anymore, so 4 would have been
as
good.
As a guy on TV, we didn't want extra innings.
Exactly.
And I don't think y'all do either.
No, but, it's a great story now. It makes you feel like you've accomplished a little bit more when you go 7 games. But, hey, no one wants to make a mistake. That, once again, being honest with yourself. The other thing we're noticing now is that we only have 8 sets of eyes, We're out there with 8 eyes looking. They have 17 to 19 cameras. And they have angles that are impossible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now they put the little cameras in the ground.
But are y'all offended, though? Because,
No.
every sport has it now.
No.
And the thing is, they just want to get it right. And I was like you, the human element forever. Hey, it's baseball's part of it. But you know what? Getting it right's not bad either.
The most incredible thing, fans get upset. Like, if they overturn a call, it just gives me a pit in the bottom of my stomach because you strive for perfection, but we're not perfect. But if they keep a call a stand or a confirm, that's when all the fans are booing. A confirm, they almost feel, or if they overturn, they feel sorry for you. And there's, get it right next time. It's like, wait, something's wrong here. There's no arguments anymore. It's weird. It's come full circle. That Bobby Cox thing would have never happened.
That's true. They don't really have many arguments anymore.
Never would happen.
Boy, the arguments were great in the old days. Tons of them. I know your dad. I know he was nationally, but Earl Weaver was my favorite of all time.
Okay.
He used to kick dirt. Lou Piniella, another one. I'm sure your dad crossed when he was with the Reds. Great. But how about the dangers? There's Leland. He's getting there. How about this? This looked like
I think that was Gene Mock.
This had to be like 64.
That was back in the day.
Back in the day. Gene Mock. That's a great name. Hey, by the way, how about this other part? You guys you have some protection, but you have to have gotten a few foul balls. Talk about the perils of this job, because that ball could do a lot of damage.
The amazing thing, I think it's in all sports now, is really the concussion.
There you go.
And,
there's one for you.
Yep, that happened. That happened last year, I think, on of all things, a warm-up pitch. It was which is the catcher didn't realize, which is kind of hard. It's kind of hard to miss my big frame, but the catcher apparently didn't know I was behind him.
They're much bigger guys than you, trust me.
And of course, it couldn't have been one of the guys that was a knuckleballer. It's guys that were throwing.
There's another one, because sometimes you get rattled right in the face on a fastball. I know you have your helmet, but your mask, but that's still got to hurt.
Coming through the minor leagues, you would get a shot, or the catcher would miss a ball, and what you would do is you go out after the game and drink about 6 or 8 beers.
There you go.
Then you'd wake up the next day and say, "Oh, I got a headache." Oh, it's because I drank too many beers.
Right.
But that wasn't the case. Baseball was at the forefront of a lot of this concussion protocol, and they're making great strides. It's amazing. We go out to these Arizona meetings, and the stuff they're showing us and telling us, it's incredible.
I've had some great baseball players and some coaches, obviously in the college level. I've had them all, Maneri and everybody else, and we've had Will Clark. But I've never had a guy sign a baseball, and you're going to be the first because you brought me a used one, which I'm going to keep here. We're going to sign this new one, and we're not done with you because either during the All-Star break or after the season, since you're a Louisiana guy, I want to get you back because there's a lot more stories. I didn't know I was going to have Eric Musselman today, so I kind of had to shorten everything. But I want you to take your beautiful wife, Catherine, to this restaurant called Chez de la Chaise.
Oh, thank you very much.
Right there on Maple Street, uptown. I know you live across the lake. You got to come over occasionally.
Come over and play. We were tourists in our own city.
It's between Carrollton and Broadway. And we're
thank you.
You're going to do your first signing of a baseball. My first ever after 2 years of primetime sports, and this will only be for legends. But Hunter Wendelstedt, I can't thank you enough because you're one of the great guys, and I can't wait to get to know you.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to have you more if you don't mind.
Sounds good.
I'm going to bother you. But there he is. And by the way, I am honored to have this man, his family, his dad. They're two legends in this business, so I want to thank him. Also, coming up next, don't forget, March Madness continues, and it's been crazy. Tim Brando's coming up next. We're going to talk some Pels, too, with Daniel Sallerson. All next on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
The owners of the De La Chaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez de la Chaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez de la Chaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll at the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports. I told you this was going to be a fast-moving show, and it certainly has been. I want to thank Eric Musselman, of course, in the beginning, and then Hunter Wendelstedt. Man, those Wendelstedts have been doing this for over 50 years between him and his dad, Harry. And don't forget, we're going to have some Pels talk coming up next with their post-game host, Daniel Sallerson. This is a giant week for the Pelicans, but nothing's bigger right now than March Madness, and we're going to get into that with Tim Brando. Obviously, he has been a broadcaster for, 40 years. He's been with Fox Sports the last few years. He's done over 50 basketball games, but we're also going to talk to him about Tom Benson because he was the Saints preseason play-by-play guy on television for 11 seasons, and he knows Tom Benson well. He knows the whole family well. But here he is, Tim Brando. Welcome back to the show. You were on my first ever show way back when, 2 years ago, and here we are 2 years later, buddy.
Good to be with you, Scott. It is a great time of year, and I'm just happy to be waking up understanding that I don't have to get on an airplane today. You know,
Exactly.
It's a good day if I don't have to get on an airplane right now.
Well, we worked, you and I, my goodness, at least 10 years in the NCAA tournament, and those were some fun years. I know you did it for, at least 20, and those were good times. But let's first talk about Tom Benson. It's a sad week in New Orleans, obviously. Tom Benson bought the Saints in 1985, been the owner for over 30 years, brought them immediate success. What are your memories, Tim, of your time with the Saints, and particularly knowing Tom Benson?
First and foremost, when I was asked to do the games, and this was in the early 2000s, it was before Sean Payton and before Katrina hit, and it was for the UPN station there. Channel 54, I think, was carrying the games, and Archie Manning and Ron Jaworski and I did the games, actually.
Yeah.
And So I was thrilled to have the opportunity to work with both of those guys. As you know, I'm very, very close with Archie. And Jaws I had known, and he was in the midst of a rising career at ESPN, so I thought it would just be a ton of fun, and it was. And during that period, obviously the Saints weren't as good, but they were a team that you knew everybody there cared about. And that was the other great thing was the ratings. If you look at all the NFL teams' preseason ratings, the Saints are always at the very top of the list. So it's rare now, whether it's local television or regional television, where you're getting a 50 share.
That's
but
huge.
That's what you get because there's so much interest in that team. And given my history as a broadcaster in New Orleans when I was just starting out in radio, I was thrilled to come back and just get to see all my old friends. Hokie Guy John and Jim Henderson were doing the radio games, and all the old columnists, Peter Finney, the late Peter Finney, so many great people that I had such a great relationship with as a kid, coming back to see all of them. But I didn't know Mr. Benson that well at all, and did not come into contact with him until I started doing the games. And he was always so gracious and so much fun to be around. But he always yielded to Mickey Loomis and to Greg Bensel. And then later, obviously, when Sean Payton came in post-Katrina and right before Katrina hit, when you think about after Katrina and then post-Katrina, to have been a part of that as a broadcaster and traveled with the team, knowing what they were going through, and it was a tumultuous period. And even for him, obviously. And I think to have gotten through that the way that he did, and the organization to have gotten through it, was just amazing. And from that period forward, the New Orleans Saints became, I think, a national franchise, much like the Cowboys. I think if you talk to the people at Fox on the NFC side, one of the great draws now for national games after the Dallas Cowboys would be the New Orleans Saints. And, they brought the team up during that year to play both in Jackson and in Shreveport because the Dome wasn't ready. And it was at that point I really got to know the organization and the people within it, including Mr. Benson, pretty well. The main thing to take away from Tom Benson, I think, is that in a state that is minus Fortune 500 companies, we really needed someone like him in the state of Louisiana to step up. And he did in a very large way. And I think his legacy will forever be etched in sports minds from generation to generation because of what he did when no one else really would have. That being said, there were bumps along the way, and he got through them with flying colors. And the league became, I think, in many ways dependent on him to be one of its leading owners, and he was. What happened with the Hall of Fame Stadium, I think, is proof of that. That'll never change. So I think galvanizing not only the New Orleans community but the state of Louisiana was something that was desperately needed at that time, and without Tom Benson, none of that takes place. So my condolences and prayers to the family, and I hope whatever needs to be worked out is worked out for them. Because the state of Louisiana really, really needs him. And having been a longtime resident of North Louisiana and someone that lived and worked in Baton Rouge and New Orleans as a young man, I really will tell you that we'll never be able to repay him for what he did. A lot of states in the South that are without major sports franchises would probably love to have what the city of New Orleans has because it brings so many different cultures together. Ethnicities, different religious groups, you name it. There's that one common bond, rooting for the Saints, the fleur-de-lis. And without Tom Benson, we would have lost that after John Meekum gave up his ownership. So God bless him forever.
Beautifully said, Tim. That was gorgeous. Great tribute to the great Tom Benson. And now we're moving on to March Madness because it has been living up to its name and it's truly been madness. I know we have tons of upsets every year, but I don't remember the first weekend taking out an entire region where the 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds went out in the South. Over, down, and below, if you're looking at your bracket like everybody else does, on the bottom left, that 1 and 2 seed just went out yesterday. North Carolina the 2 and Xavier the 1. We talked about in the Open, all the teams. Virginia lost the first time to a 16 seed. Obviously, Cincinnati went down yesterday as a 2 seed. The strongest 4 seed I've seen in a long time, Arizona, they went out the first day. And then obviously the other high seed went out there. But then also Michigan State, a strong 3. So what do you attribute all of these huge losses to?
College basketball's landscape is flat. I've been saying it all year long, having worked primarily for Fox, the Big Ten and the Big East, and then the ACC for the ACC network all the way through to the finals in Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago. Even the so-called great teams with the brand names had flaws. There were warts on all of these teams. You could see it. And so as you're watching these mid-majors playing around the country, that's part of what's wrong, I think, and one of the reasons I was so upset with the selection committee this year. Not only did they miss seed, but there are a few other stories out there like Loyola and like Nevada that didn't even get a shot. All right, like Kermit Davis's team at Middle Tennessee, by example. That's a team that should have been in this tournament and could have done maybe what those teams did. But I think if you look at the numbers by these teams, that's the other thing you notice. What is the difference between a 13 and a 1? Right now, not a lot. Not a lot. When a 16 beats a 1 for the first time in the history of the tournament, 135 and 0, and that was no fluke what Maryland Baltimore County did. Particularly when you consider how well they played against Kansas State, even in defeat in the second round. They just were – the shots that were falling in the first game didn't fall in the second game. But they certainly were the equal of Kansas State physically. There was no denying that. So what we should learn from it is in today's college basketball, particularly because the greatest teams still have players that are only going to be there for 1 year and then exit. These teams are just rounding into shape chemistry-wise, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Okay, well, Calipari has seen the bracket open up for him. Krzyzewski's seen the bracket open up for him. But I'm not sure that these teams are good enough to get through to the Final Four from the round of 16. I'm not at all. I mean, I think, what Syracuse did to Michigan State, that's part and parcel of what Boeheim does all the time. He took out Virginia when they were 1 seed and had a chance to go to the Final Four a couple of years ago and got through as an 11. I mean, they went from the first 4 all the way through. So maybe the thing we need to learn is that the sport is about matchups. It's not about seeds. The major conferences that get so much love and are in tradition-rich areas like Indiana and North Carolina maybe don't always measure up to A&M. A&M actually outmanned North Carolina. That doesn't happen very often. Okay? Texas A&M was bigger, stronger, faster, and better than North Carolina. I think about that, okay? So that's where the college game is today. I thought 40 different teams had a chance to get to the Final Four, and I think when we line up on Thursday, Scotty, all 16 teams rightfully believe they have a chance to win it all. I don't know that we've ever said that.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Hey, you touched on something that I don't know if the committee could have even planned because Syracuse had to win 3 games to get there. They were in the first 4, and obviously they beat the 6th seed, and then yesterday the big upset with Michigan State. But like you said, is it really an upset? But here's the thing. You have Jim Boeheim, who's been there before. He won a national title. He's gotten he's been to a few Final Fours and a few championship games, including one here in New Orleans back in 1987. But he is going up against, pictured right there, Mike Krzyzewski. These are longtime friends. They coach USA basketball together. They are the two winningest coaches in meaning college basketball coaching wins in history, and they face off in the Sweet 16. I know you know them both well. Tell us about this matchup and these two guys going up against each other.
Well, it's a zone off because neither team can guard man-to-man. So it's not, you know what's coming, both teams. Krzyzewski really did borrow when he committed. He only committed to staying strictly zone in the latter stages of the regular season. Once he made that commitment, his team became much better defensively because Bagley and Wendell Carter, the 2 lottery picks, they can't guard man-to-man. They can't, okay? It's impossible. They got beat. They lost a lot of games because they were trying to guard man-to-man. When he went zone, they started communicating better, and they are massive in size. Other than Chukwu inside for Syracuse and Dolezaj, they're not particularly as long as they used to be. They have no, Hakeem Warwick types who blocked the shot for Kansas to win the 2003 title in the Dome. They don't have any of those other than Chukwu inside the transfer from Providence. That game will probably be won with the winning team scoring about 60 points. It'll be probably a colossal bore in terms of trying to compare that game to, say, for instance, Michigan and A&M, which I think will be an up-and-down game and fun to watch. But you're right, because of the two Hall of Fame coaches and the history they have playing against one another, it's tough to beat a team over and over again multiple times, and that's what Duke will have to do. Don't be surprised if Syracuse knocks them out.
No, I mean, I'm not surprised with anything Syracuse ever does, particularly what they did just a couple of years ago when they had to do the same thing to get to the Final Four as a double-digit seed like they are right now. Hey, I got to ask you, I only have a couple minutes left. Villanova is a team you saw a lot of this season. I think they are playing extremely good basketball. I think most people with the eyeball test would say them and Duke have to be the favorites at the moment. Kansas is obviously there as well. But you know Villanova. You did a ton of Big East games, and that is a very strong conference. Tell us why they are so good.
Well, Villanova in this next matchup with West Virginia, I think, is in great shape because West Virginia tries to scramble you up, play full court, and force turnovers to win. Villanova's got every player on the court, including the 7-footer Spellman, can handle the ball. And they've got 6 guys shooting over 40% from three-point range. They are the most complete team that has the most margin for error. If they don't hit as many threes, they can drive to the basket. Jalen Brunson, in my opinion, is the best player in college basketball as a point guard, but everybody can bring the ball up the floor. DiVincenzo is a scoring machine and can also come out and play the point as well. Eventually, I think they're going to play Purdue, and it's a shame the Boilermakers don't have Haas. But I think you saw what happened with Matt Harms, a 7'3" Scandinavian that can run the floor and protect the rim for them. It's kind of a shame that Purdue and Nova are in the same region because both teams, I think, have Final Four national title capability. But Villanova is the one team that has played consistently, that played up to its namesake, in this tournament to this point. I like Villanova to win it all, and I think Jay Wright has the most balanced team that's out there. Ultimately, the only teams that have been able to take Villanova out have been teams that had really good guard play, but also shot the three really well in a given day. And not everyone can do that. So I think they're probably in the catbird seat right now based on the teams that are out there remaining. But beware of Eric Musselman's team on the other side of the bracket, okay? That guy is the star of this tournament as a coach. And what they did in their comeback and what the Martin twins, what those brothers have done is incredible. I mean, it's absolutely off the charts. So it's going to be fun to see. But, yeah, Villanova, to me, is the team that is in the best position right now to go ahead and win it all with all the carnage that we've seen through the first week.
Timmy B, I love you like a big brother. We've been together for 25 years. I can't believe I'm that old already. But thank you so much, and I really appreciate the kind words and the fitting tribute to Tom Benson. So once again, Tim Brando, I appreciate you, and thank you very much.
Same to you, Scotty. All the best.
There he is. That's my boy, Timmy B. And I got to thank him. He is busy this time of year. He just finished 50 full games of NCAA basketball. He's one of the best in the business, no doubt about it. Hey, speaking of the best in the business, I got a young gun coming up. He's an up-and-comer. I guarantee you'll be hearing a lot from him in future years. His name is Daniel Sallerson. He is now the Pelicans post-game host, and this team is now 40-30 and primed to do some damage. He's going to tell you all about it next right here on Primetime Sports. Welcome back to Primetime Sports. Whew, this has been a long, big show. But hey, we can't let it go without talking about the Pelicans right now because they are now 40-30. How many of y'all at the beginning of January thought they'd be 10 games over 500 with Boogie out? That's been an incredible run. But I have right now Daniel Sallerson, who is the post-game host for all the Pelicans games, and I listen to it religiously because I'm usually in the car right after the game. And here he is for the first time ever on Primetime Sports. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you, man.
What an honor.
I mentioned you in the open as a rising star, and I truly believe that.
I
think you're going to be on your way up. But we're going to get into your history next time you're on.
Okay.
We have a short amount of time, so I want to talk Pelicans right now. Let's be broad. What are your thoughts about this team, and did you think they'd be where they are now, particularly after Boogie's injury?
No, I didn't think so. You know, after the Boogie injury, it took a little bit of time for them to adjust. 1-5 was the first 6 games for them. Then they really started picking it up. I think Anthony Davis took that mentality of, I have to take over for this team. Drew Holiday's been a lot more aggressive. The pace has been up a little bit, and now you're seeing the success of that.
You have a fine line because I listen to you all the time, and you work for the organization, so you have to be positive, but you also are a journalist as well, and you do say when things aren't going well, you say it like it is. Hey, they are not looking good right now, and there was a stretch earlier in the year where they were a bit frustrating. You know, right now, we're taking it for granted that they're getting wins and wins and wins, and if they have a 2-game losing streak like they did a little earlier this past week, everybody's like, what happened? But talk about that fine line you have to draw between, hey, saying it like it is, and then also being an employee of the organization.
Well, like you said, if there's something wrong with the team, I'm more than happy to point it out, as long as we can back it up with certain numbers or what's been going on. But speculation about certain things is something that I really can't talk about as far as free agent signings and contracts and even the future, because it's something that I don't even know about. No one talks to me about it, and that's perfectly fine. So during the post-game show, there were times, I remember end of December, where they lost to the Mavericks and the Kings in back-to-back games, and everyone was talking about getting off the rails a little bit, and understandably so. But it was just something that it is what it is, and now you're beating those teams that you should beat, and it's just something that you have to kind of play the fine line as a company employee. But it's fun, though. It's okay to talk about bad, but it's perfectly fine to talk about good as well.
How great is Anthony Davis?
Unbelievable.
I mean, seriously, we're taking him for granted, but he's in his 6th year here, and he has now become the guy that we all thought he'd be unstoppable.
I tell people all the time, when you come to games, everyone used to come to the games to see the opponent, unfortunately, just because the Pelicans have not been as good in the past. But now you have to come and see Anthony Davis. A once-in-a-lifetime superstar has come here to New Orleans, has been playing phenomenal, especially after the Boogie Cousins injury. I mean, look at Boston. He's beaten them twice this season, averaging almost 40 and 14, the numbers he put up in February for the Player of the Month. It's just been unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, that win last night, on Sunday night, let's talk about that, because the Boston, they swept the Celtics.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, this is not the Celtics. This team is 24-9 on the road before they lost to the Pelicans. That's the 2nd or 3rd best road record, I think, only behind Golden State and, of course, Houston. But that was a huge win, and I think one of the impetuses to the season, the catalyst that kept it going, was that great win they had. I believe it was overtime, whatever it was, in Boston.
It was, yeah.
It was a tight game, but how big was this win last night and the one back in Boston?
It was a must-win last night, or on Sunday night, against the Boston Celtics. When you split that back-to-back against Houston and Boston, especially in the Western Conference playoff race, it was huge to get that game. And it didn't look good in the first half, but Jason Tatum took over for the Celtics, who's going to be a really good player for Boston.
Great player.
But that second half, I think they just realized that they needed to pick it up a little bit, and Anthony Davis, of course, took over. You saw Drew a little bit. He had a passive game yesterday, but Mirotic stepped up in the 4th. You saw a lot of guys. Check Diallo had an unbelievable game,
yes.
season high in points. He really brought the energy to the crowd and brought the energy on the court. I think that was huge for them.
Well, you mentioned something I thought was very telling, because Drew Holiday has been that Robin to, obviously, Anthony Davis's Batman once Boogie went down. But yesterday they managed to win despite the fact, I know he only had 3 points late in the 4th. I don't know what he ended up with. I know he didn't get to double figures. But he and Rondo were low on the points, and you can still win and win by 20 against the Celtics when your guards aren't playing particularly well. That speaks volumes to me.
And that's what you're going to need down the stretch. You're going to need the other guys to step up besides AD and Drew. If Drew has a bad game, who's going to step up? On Sunday, it was Check Diallo. Off the bench lately, it's been Ian Clark. Same goes for Darius Miller. So those are the guys that are going to have to step up in the playoff run. You know what you're going to get with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, but especially in this tough stretch coming up as far as minutes are concerned, you're going to have to rely on some of these other guys to play a little bit more and play productive.
When the game ended, there was 4 teams at 40 and 30. I know Minnesota ended up losing. Thank you, Houston.
Yes.
So they are 40 and 31 as of Monday, but 3 teams are tied for 5th. but 5th could be easily 8th. And there's 3 teams in there. Utah, I think they're 22-2. This has been the most unreal story because they were 10 games under 500 not far before the break. So when you look at these teams coming down the stretch, Oklahoma City and Portland are a little bit ahead, but you've got these other teams all sitting right there. And, the Nuggets are still knocking on the door. Clippers are right behind them. How is this thing going to shake out?
I don't know how it's going to shake out. And we saw last week, the Pelicans are all the way up to 4, and then they lose a couple games. They're all the way down to 8th. You're getting close to being on the outside looking in. I think with Portland and Thunder, they're starting to get a little cozy at 3 and 4, but the Pelicans do have one more game against both those teams, and they own the season series right now against those teams. So if you can clinch a season series against Portland and end up winning a tiebreaker for them, that could be huge. But you look at San Antonio, you have one game with them, last game of the season, which last time the Pelicans played them the end of the season, they made the playoffs back in 2014-15. The Jazz have been on the roll, but they were sitting at the 10th spot for so long. They finally were able to creep up to 5th now. And I think the Nuggets and the Clippers are the teams that are going to be the tough ones trying to make it in. The Clippers catching up with them, not having Blake Griffin, the injury to Danilo Gallinari. And then the Nuggets are starting a 7-game road trip, which began with a loss to Memphis, who is trying to lose and have lost 20 straight.
Yeah,
so the Nuggets
crazy.
are a team that are really falling right now.
Hey, I got to tell you, you have a unique perspective because like Sean Kelly and John DeShazer, you're an employee of the Pelicans, and I know they're also doing a lot of Saints stuff as well, and you do a little bit in spring training stuff with the Black and Blue Report. But Alvin Gentry, I don't think the rest of the city knows as well, especially you, and I know him, and he's been on the show, and I knew him back in the early years. He's one of the nicest human beings out there. I mean, honestly, when he came to our studio, everyone that works in our crew was like, that is the nicest man I've ever met. But, people love to denigrate people when they don't think they're doing what they should be doing. He's had some cards playing against him with the injuries in his first couple of seasons, but you're starting to see what this man's all about and this free-flowing offense that he brought over from Golden State, which is now, even with them injuries, is coming into full effect. So tell people what you know and think about Alvin Gentry.
Oh, I love Alvin Gentry, and not just because of how well he coaches, but his interaction on the court when he meets the media, always asking how they're doing. Even after the media session is done, he'll sit there and talk to you for 5-10 minutes. We'll tell you a story. He had a great story about Tom Benson the other day, about he bought his first car from a Tom Benson dealership back in 1889. Wow. It was a used BMW from a Tom Benson Mercedes dealership. He's just an unbelievable guy, and we took a lot of calls at the beginning of the season, and people were frustrated with Alvin Gentry, and I got the frustration as far as the team losing. But he was never the guy to blame, in my opinion.
Thank you. I agree.
And it's something that now you're seeing. Everyone's like, I love Alvin Gentry. And it's amazing how things have turned around and talking about, wanting to see him go. And I'm like, he was not the issue. You're finally seeing the benefits of what he's been trying to do with that fast pace. Unfortunately, with Boogie, you played a little bit of a slower pace, but you're still a top 5 team as far as pace is concerned. Now you're in the top 3. It's just it was a little easier with Boogie out, but that's how Alvin adjusted. Can you imagine adjusting having an all-star starter out? It's going to take a few games to do, and certainly the Pelicans have adjusted well.
And you're in the top 3 with teams called the Rockets and the Warriors.
Yes.
I mean, this team does play exciting brand of basketball. Hey, by the way, Gentry, he went off after the game against the Rockets, and I was having my friends that work at Turner Sports. They were in the studio. They're like, I'm loving this post-game sound by Gentry. He's got some passion.
I loved it, too, and we played it on our post-game show, and it got a lot of run as far as people wanting to call, and they wanted to help him pay his fine because that was something that, unfortunately, he got, but he knew it was coming.
$15,000.
$15,000, it was, I mean, you saw Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis react. They know that the coach has his back, and it was something that was boiling over and boiling over. We saw the call, unfortunately, with James Harden on the three-point play. There was a play late in the game where P.J. Tucker took out the legs of Ian Clark, no foul called. It was something that Alvin Gentry, I think, needed to get off his chest, and I enjoyed it. I know it was something that a lot of people enjoyed, but he loved seeing the passion, and it was something that was really good to see.
Daniel Sallerson, it's been a pleasure. I got to tell you, we will have longer segments later. I didn't know I was going to get Eric Musselman until the last second, but I really appreciate you because you came at last notice as well, and I can't thank you enough. I have a wonderful gift certificate to a restaurant that is uptown. It's called Chez de la Chez. It's between Carrollton and Broadway on Maple Street. Man, this has been a pleasure, and we'll have you again. A rising star in our business, there he is, Daniel Sallerson. And I got to thank all the guests today. Long distance, we had Tim Brando and Eric Musselman. Good luck to him in the Sweet 16. That bracket's wide open. And thank you to Hunter Wendelstedt, man. He just got back from spring training, and he came all the way down from across the lake just to join us, and he's got Major League starting soon. So I appreciate all of them, but none more than my producer. This man has been doing crazy great work. His name is Will Hill, they call him William Hill, and without him today, we have done nothing. And the Redhead Tsunami, Anthony, and my man Kenny Gino's back. To everyone at CST and WLE, I thank you very much. It's been a great show. We'll see you next week on Primetime Sports.